and I'm going to be talking to you about some recent work done with my collaborators at University of Chicago and UC Santa Barbara on detecting gender stereotypes using both lexicon and supervised learning methods. Biases in language influence how we interact with each other and in society as a whole. Recent research has shown that gendered language, in particular, reinforces gender stereotypes. Unfortunately, the methods that we have to detect gender stereotypes in language has been very limited. There's been a lot of research done in detecting gender differences. There's been psychologists that have looked into the differences between the sexes, how these differences perpetuate gender roles in society, and how these gender roles impact our perceptions of masculinity and femininity. So we'd like to know if these previous studies still are pertinent to society today in recent perceptions of gender stereotypes. In terms of modeling patterns in text, there's been a lot of research into lexicon-based approaches, which are very simple and easy to implement. Particularly, a bag of words style approach will break down a sentence or a paragraph into single word tokens, and each of those tokens is assigned a label or a score. All of those scores or labels are cumulative, and that's what's used to score or label the entire body of text. Sometimes these are combined with word embedding models, which look at how words are used frequently together in terms of distance in the same sentence or paragraph. Additionally, there's end-to-end model approaches, which use a raw body of text as an input to a model to receive a single label without looking at single word tokens in between. Before, there have been many approaches with using deep learning neural networks. These, however, require massive amounts of training data. For a natural language processing task, for instance, these might require tens or hundreds of thousands of data points, which is not really feasible to train your own model. Thankfully, in recent years, there have been more pre-trained models available from companies like Google that have access to these large data sets. However, there hasn't been very much research into how these can be applied specifically to the gender language domain. So we would like to know how these lexicon approaches and end-to-end approaches compare when applied specifically at looking at gendered language and text. So looking back, what started all of this mostly is BSRI and the PAQ, which are studies done by psychologists back in the 70s that looked into identifying characteristics associated with one gender or the other and what was desirable in US society. So Sandra Bem asked her university students what kinds of characteristics that they could come up with off the top of their head that they thought were desirable in US society. And since then, these lists have been used as a state-of-the-art for determining masculine or feminine words in text. Particularly, very recently, commercial products have become available that claim to be able to determine if a body of text, in this instance, job advertisements, skew towards masculine or feminine language. In this case of Text.io, they look at all the feminine and masculine words, they count them up, and give you a final score. In this case, it's possible for the masculine and feminine words to cancel each other out. Since that has been done, however, Donnelly et al. Found that the BSRI is not necessarily representative of current perspectives in society. Particularly, they found that female US college students are much less likely to endorse feminine traits that were very common back in the 70s. And even more recently, some work that we did looked specifically at how these commercial products that measured gendered language in job advertisements actually perform when compared to recent perspectives on gender stereotypes in society. And we found that even by changing these particular words in job advertisements, people were no more likely to want to apply for that job. So, these lexicons have been used as a golden standard for nearly 50 years now, but we're not really sure how accurate they are. Yes, they're simple and they're easy to implement, but as I mentioned, the feminine and masculine words could cancel each other out. and we're not sure how well they do with measuring words in context. Particularly, they may just be fundamentally outdated. So first, we want to find out if these lexicons are actually measuring current perspectives of gender stereotypes in society. We did this by taking a data-driven approach to develop our own updated lexicon. We started off with the Wikipedia data dump, and we parsed out all of the verbs and adjectives that are used to describe any humans. From there, we asked Amazon Mechanical Turk workers to score the most frequent 1,000 verbs and 1,000 adjectives on how desirable they thought they would be for a male or a female in US society. Using these labels, we trained several combinations of unsupervised and supervised models with different word embeddings. For more details on the exact combinations that we used, I'd refer you to the paper. Using these labeled words, we were able to go back and score the rest of the unlabeled verbs and adjectives to create a completed lexicon. And now we're able to score an entire body of text using the bag of words method with our updated lexicon. What we found when training our models is that the lexicon still needs improvement. The unsupervised models were very inaccurate, and the supervised models showed some success, but overall not great. Our best models, linear regression and SVM combined with the word-to-vec word embedding, but still the results were not very great. Additionally, we compared our updated lexicon to these previous lexicons, and we found that there was not very much overlap, which suggests that the previous lexicons do not reflect modern language use. So now we think that lexicons, even when updated, are still limited in their effectiveness, and there's no way to know if they possibly capture words in context. Now, we really want to know if we can update this methodology to something that will reflect current perspectives and will capture words in context. In 2018, Google released their BERT language model. This is a pre-trained model that has been trained on a very large English language corpus and has created a generalized language model. Using this general language model, we can then use a limited amount of additional training data to create a fine-tuned model for our particular task, in this case, measuring gendered language. For this, we create what we call the end-to-end approach. Ideally, we want to take a paragraph of raw text, put it into our model, and receive a gender score at the end. So, in order to fine-tune BERT, we need to get more training data, in this case, labeled paragraphs, because we don't want just single words like we used for the lexicon. For this, we looked to Prolific and asked the crowd workers to look online for articles that describe either a male or female person and are consistent or contradictory to common gender stereotypes. We fed this labeled data into the BERT model so that we could have our fine-tuned model and get just a gender classification given any raw input. In order to validate our initial user study labeled data, we used our same testing data again and performed an additional user study with different participants, and we found the results were comparable. So we believe that our model is representative of typical US population. With this, we think that our end-to-end result shows promise. Even with considerable limited training data, we were able to find high accuracy. Even after extending the lexicon beyond the ground truth dataset to the full dataset of our verbs and adjectives, it still does not compare to the results of our end-to-end. Finally, we applied our model to a real-world task. We looked at job advertisements, and we compared our results to two state-of-the-art tools. Earlier, I mentioned Text.io, and we compared to them, and we also compared to another company called Unitive that does similar lexicon-based quantification of job advertisements. We compared the results to our previous study, which looked at LinkedIn job advertisements. And we asked participants how many women they presumed were in a job position and how likely they thought that that job advertisement would appeal to more women or more men. What we found is that our model was much more successful at determining the correct gender analysis for each job advertisement. Even though these are state-of-the-art tools. Furthermore, we still see gendered language in society. Job advertisements is just one example of this. News articles, Wikipedia pages, movie scripts, fiction, nonfiction novels all contain gendered language. And we hope that with this model, by detecting gendered language, moving forward, we'll be able to mitigate its effects. And just like to thank all of my lovely collaborators. And if you have any questions, refer to the paper or feel free to email me. Thank you.